verification webinar. My name is Changden Beck. I'm from ICLEI World Secretariat. I am the junior officer here, and I'm in charge of the development of greenhouse gas accounting tools, reporting platforms, as well as in this project together with NPL, the development of a verification standard. So as you are selected from CCCR, the Carbon City Climate Registry now changed into Carbon Climate Registry. I hope you are already familiar with our registry. I would just do a very quick wrap-up and summary. So, so far, together with your city, we already have 465 number of reporting from city and local government that covers 44 countries around the world, representing 423 million populations. Among them, we're receiving commitment. Oh. Okay. Can you see my? Yep. Sorry. We receive commitment, actions, and performance, which is greenhouse gas, on our platform. And today we are focusing on the performance, which is greenhouse gas inventory reported to the platform. As your city is selected, because your city have a robust record of inventory reported, as well as you indicated that your inventory was verified. So later, NPL will introduce more detail of this verification standard we're going to develop. We hope you can actively cooperate with us to share the experience from your city as well. Here is what so far the CCCR cities coverage. You can see that we're representing cities from all around the world, and we are reporting, as I mentioned, commitment, performance, and actions. And through those reporting, we help city to promote transparency and accountability of commitment, as well as the greenhouse gas development. We are helping city to improve their measurable, reportable, and verifiable information supported. I think that also fall into today's topic. We are together with NPL developing the verification standard. We hope that can be better benefit for the city in the CCCR. And of course, the value also including recognition and the inspiration. We are now preparing for the Lima COP that is coming next week, and we are also prepared aggregated reporting result from all the 400. Now we have almost 500 cities, and we are going to representing them and representing their reporting result at the UN conference. So far is for the CCCR. I believe you must receive contact from us already quite regularly. But if you still have any question or suggestion or anything, you can keep me in touch in the address shown now on the webpage. So now going to the main topic today, I will hand the floor to David. Just a second. How can I would hand the floor to David. Here you go.
Okay. Hi. I think is it just Scott on the call? Okay. Well, from NPL, UK National Physical Laboratory, we've got Rod Robinson, David Butterfield, and Tom Smith, and we're going to go through a presentation and all speak at different points to outline some of the work that we've been doing under a project which sits under a European program called the Climate Kick, and I'll say a little bit about that in a minute. And the idea is to develop a verification process and a verification approach, and also to look at developing a service or a verification product. Just as a little bit of background, and I think if we've only got one or two participants on the webinar, then feel free to raise your hand at any point, and we can have a bit more of an interactive discussion. But just as background, the National Physical Laboratory in the UK is basically the UK's National Measurement Institute. We perform a similar role to NIST in the US, and so our primary role is to underpin measurement and metrology, so measurement science in the UK. We've been around for 100 years or more, and there are about now, I think, 500 scientists working at NPL. And our role is not just to measure things, but to develop methods and standards and documentary standards, and really to ensure intercomparability of measurements and data. And really that's the remit and the side of our activities that we are drawing on in this verification activity. So we work within a research group at NPL, which is the Environmental Measurements Group, and we have a strong history of developing techniques and methodologies and standards for reporting environmental data, primarily in the air pollution and air emissions side. And increasingly, in the last 10 years, we've been moving more towards some of the greenhouse gas reporting activities. We've done work looking at underpinning the emissions trading scheme in Europe, and so looking at how we can improve the uncertainty of the reported data, and also to help industry to report in a more cost-effective fashion. But we're also involved in carrying out measurements and in assessing and verifying reported emissions, particularly in the ambient air and air quality side. So the project and the work that we're doing sits under a project which is within the Climate Kick program. Climate Kick is a research program which is funded by the European Union, and it has the Kick program has an approach to developing or to addressing climate change by looking at an innovation-based approach. And the idea is that the projects, rather than just being research for the sake of research, the Climate Kick programs all aim to develop innovation which leads to services or products which are taken up by industry or by regulators or by government. So the idea is that the change that's affected in greenhouse gas reduction is driven by, if you like, a strong business case, a strong market drive for the services. So rather than just producing another report or another piece of research, the idea is that you actually get climate mitigation and greenhouse gas reduction by addressing needs of stakeholders. And the city project has come about through discussions with cities about where innovation would help them to address their ambitions to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions through understanding and being able to report their emissions as being, if you like, the first stage. And so the project is the Low Carbon City Lab, or LOCAL program, and it's really aimed at trying to develop a range of capabilities which will address city greenhouse gas reporting and support then programs to reduce emissions. So to allow cities to understand their emissions and then plan and take action. Within the project, it's designed to be an ongoing program which will work with cities to build new capability in the future. But the program starts with 4 sort of areas of work, or 4 services which are being developed initially. The first is addressing specifically how to get better activity data in the transport sector, because through a number of workshops that we ran in Europe, we understood that that was an area of interest, to be able to more cost effectively obtain the activity data in the transport sector. The second tranche or the second group of work is looking at direct measurement of greenhouse gas emissions. So this is similar to some of the work that's being done in the US, where you surround a city by monitoring stations and look at the direct emissions from the city and compare those with certain aspects of the inventories. And that gives a very fast and you'll see from the presentation, we're not just talking about a kind of tick box check against the paper requirements of the reporting standards, but we're actually looking at doing more in terms of understanding the data, understanding the uncertainties in the data, to give inventory producers more knowledge about how to maybe improve the inventories, or at least to understand what the quality of the data is and what kind of trust they have in the data. The final piece of work is looking at using 3D models to present the data. It's aimed at providing a more, maybe an easier to understand way of viewing greenhouse gas emissions data that might be more appropriate for policymakers or for citizens to be able to get an overview of where the emissions are being caused within the city. I should say that there are a number of partners within the project, and because of the European-based funding, these are primarily European organizations who are delivering the other parts, and we at MPL are responsible for the inventory verification work. So we'll concentrate on that aspect. So when we talk about this verification service, as I said, and we're basing the basis of the verification on the GPC, so the global protocol, because that provides some common level of reporting requirements, and whether they're meeting and how the data that they have, the input data and the output data, comply with the requirements of the reporting, and particularly, as I say, the GPC. The second is to look at the overall inventory figures in a kind of holistic approach, to look at the uncertainties, taking the data quality of the input data, feeding it through the inventory process, and giving an overall figure or an overall understanding of the confidence that you can have in the total figures. And so that provides an overall assessment of the, if you like, the uncertainties in the reported data, and that is aimed primarily at providing more confidence in the values, whether that could be for internal use or for discussions in the inventory in the wider community. And the third aspect is to look in more detail at the specific sectors and how the numbers, the input data, the activity data, the emission factors, where they're derived from, what the uncertainties are that feed through those for that sector, to provide a real understanding of the numerical kind of quality at a specific sector scale. And some of those tools that we're building would really allow cities to do a kind of what-if analysis in terms of where would it be best to spend what limited resources you have to maybe improve some data in order to be able to improve the overall quality. So it's a kind of sensitivity analysis of where's the best place to spend some resources to improve, or to acknowledge that in certain areas the data is uncertain, but the overall impact of that uncertainty is minor for the entire inventory, so it's not worth spending the effort to improve that because its impact on the overall numbers is low. But that also should give more information to policymakers to be able to understand the particular causes and the particular reason or reasons behind the sector emissions, maybe to inform future policy decisions to actually mitigate and reduce the emissions. So what's the benefit of verification in terms of why would you need verification? We'd be interested, obviously, in hearing the response, the drivers that you have, but the overall kind of drivers that we had from workshops and discussions with cities that we've had, one was to actually give some confidence in terms of obtaining climate financing and investment in projects to reduce the emissions. If you have a good understanding of the inventory and a good confidence in the inventory figures, then you've got more, you can have more confidence with the investment in terms of where to access or how to access that funding, and to give confidence to the people who are going to be supporting some of these activities. There's also the ability to get some advice and some understanding to improve the inventory, to improve the uncertainties in the inventory, so that for baselining or for policy or for assessment of performance against targets, you have more confidence in the numbers that you're using. And as I said, to be able to target any investment in improving the inventories in order to put the best use of what funds you have. And also there's a two-stage process. If we can identify parts of the inventory where there's high uncertainty, then at that point you can't make a decision maybe to focus mitigation or greenhouse gas reduction activity if the data are uncertain. So maybe it's best to spend some of the resources in improving the number. In other cases, it may be that the actual emission numbers are high for that sector. The uncertainty is low enough that it's obvious that is a sector that some focus on actually reducing emissions should be made. And of course, the overall aim is also to have transparency in the data, so there's confidence in the numbers both for the policymakers, the governance, but also for the citizens, and in terms of, as I said, any climate negotiations or any comparisons between cities. So as a part of the work that we've done so far, we've taken a look at the inventories from the UK. I'm going to hand over to Thomas, my colleague who's been doing that work, to give a summary of what we've done looking at the UK London inventory.
Hello. So obviously MPL is based in London, so that was partly why we've done it. So we've been able to have face-to-face meetings and get access to some information that wasn't publicly available, although London has published its one. It's publicly available online. They use the PAS 2070 format, which I think is purely European, UK-based one. So it's unlikely to be one you'll come up against in the States. But in terms of compatibility, it sort of highlights some of the problems in getting from one format of inventory into another. And in order to compare and look at the different sectors across different formats, we've been trying to convert into GBC. Yeah. So the initial thing we did was just look at which sectors were the biggest. So just ranking them by which had the highest, subsectors had the highest total emissions. And as you can see from that, it's commercial, institutional buildings, and then the residential buildings, and then flights and private cars comes up. But when you dig a bit deeper and look at the uncertainties associated with this, then it gets a little more complicated, because as you can see on the left there, the residential buildings and the commercial institutional buildings have very high uncertainty, so it's difficult to, there you can't tell which is the subsector you really need to home in on and improve. So you'd want to improve the uncertainties on both of those, probably before looking to reduce the emissions themselves. Whereas if you look at another sector, for instance, the manufacturing industries and the grid supplied energy, now they're very similar magnitude of emissions again, but you'd want to look at the grid supplied energy because that's got much higher uncertainty. So here we're looking at a couple of sectors in a bit more detail. So this is stationary industry, and as I've just pointed out, the manufacturing industry emissions, they tend to be quite highly regulated, which is probably the reason why when you go, the total emissions is on the left and the emissions weighted by the uncertainty is on the right. You can obviously see that the manufacturing industries, that cuts right down when you take into account the uncertainty, 5% to 1%. Whereas when you're looking at the commercial and institutional buildings and facilities, not much attention has been paid to the uncertainty, so that increases the proportion of the overall emissions. Yeah. So here we're looking at the transport. London is something of a strange case here because you've got such a high proportion of civil aviation. That's because there were 2 airports within the boundaries of the city inventory, and then there's a further 3 airports around London where a proportion of the flights relating to weighted by the population comes into it. So that's why there's such a high level of aviation in this. But obviously you've also got a lot of commuters into London from the areas around it. And here you can see that the uncertainty in that section is much higher. So you've got the road transport going from 36%. Once you weigh in uncertainty, it goes up to 43%. So that would be the area you'd want to look at emphasising for transport.
It might be a good opportunity to stop now and have some discussion before we move on to maybe a more detailed look at the verification service.
Yes, sure. Scott, you are on mute now. You can join us if you have any questions so far, and you can feel free to raise them. Hello, Scott? Hello? Oh, he said he does not have a mic. Then you can you can join us with typing if you have a question. Actually.
It's okay. Shall we carry on and then we can?
Yeah, we can wait. Yeah, we can wait for your question. Well, waiting for how might you relate to ICLAI ClearPath? I can answer that. ICLAI ClearPath is a calculation and reporting tool developed by ICLAI US office, and it's similar to HEAT Plus. It's also compliant to GPC's previous version, but not yet 100% compliant to the GPC. The latest version going to be launched next week. We think it's, but I think the principle are the same. How to assess the uncertainty of data. It's just a way of categorizing emission sources as here listed sectors and subsector. So I think the service here and the methodology will be developed under this project will be definitely applicable for users from ClearPath. Does that solve your question? Yeah. Okay, so then we move on. You can always just type in your question whenever you have it. Okay?
Okay, and Chang, we won't see those, so you will have to raise the questions with us.
Yeah, I will read it.
Unless Scott chooses to broadcast the question, I think you can use a drop down to do that. Now, I think just to build on what Chang said, I think we will look at the integration with ClearPath. I think in terms of when we do some more detailed work with cities who are reporting under to the carbon and the ICLAI using ICLAI's tools. So I think it is a good question, because I think we do need to be sure that we are integrating with the tools that are already available out there. So okay. A little bit of confusion over who's talking here next. So just want to give a brief outline of what the process is in terms that we are building in terms of doing the verification service, the process for verification. And I think it's fair to say at this point that the driver for the verification came from requests from cities that we had discussed at the beginning when we were formulating the program. So a lot of what we've developed has come through interaction with a number of cities in terms of what they wanted out of the verification. So that the tools and the processes that we're developing start, as you'll have seen from what Thomas presented, start with understanding what's available in the city's inventory reports, what's publicly available, and what data are available to us from the city. And really part of the work is in harmonizing those data into a common structure and a common format. The GPC will help with that, but every city through historical, the historical way that they have developed their database, their inventories, have different structures and different formats and different ways of getting the input data. And so part of the work which moves towards having comparability between the numbers that cities are producing, which is a kind of side benefit of the verification process is to put all those data into common format, common databases. Then obviously there's an interaction with the cities to clarify issues with the data, to understand. Usually there's less information on where specific data sources have come from and what assumptions have been made, and how some of those activity or emission factors, where they have come from. And so part of the initial phase of discussion is to get clarify questions that we would have at that stage. From that initial and updating of the data based on those discussions, we then generate the overview statistics. So this is the kind of top-level assessment and sensitivity analysis in terms of where are the biggest sources of uncertainties in the emission inventory, and where are the biggest emission numbers across the sectors and the subsectors. For particular sectors, we're then looking at statistical tools, including things like Monte Carlo analysis, where you basically run repeat runs using variations on the input data to see what the sensitivity in the output is from the input variations. That lets us identify where are the, if you like, where are the key factors or the key assumptions that are being made that have the biggest impact on the uncertainty in the inventory. Because as I said earlier, one of the outputs of this work is to identify where there may be some numbers which the inventory compilers know have been pretty much, assumed have very low uncertainty, but they may have very little impact on the overall reported numbers. There's no point in kind of focusing in areas where there's little final impact on the total figures. Then in the kind of in-depth analysis then focuses on some of the key sectors where there are the largest emissions, to look at the uncertainties in those, and to look then at also the verification. So this is the assessment against the requirements of the inventory standards, and also to look at numerical uncertainty results. So the GPC uses a three-stage data quality tag. So high data quality has detailed activity data, for example. Medium scale data maybe using modeling or some assumptions, and low level would be using default factors. And generally as well, they will follow that the low level quality will be national or IPCC numbers, whereas the high data quality will be local figures or measured data at city scale. And many of the cities that are compiling or moving towards GPC reporting will have that level of uncertainty values. So merely a tagged high, medium, or low. What we're looking at is improving that to get some numerical figures, some uncertainty numbers, which will then feed through to a value on uncertainty. Then obviously the final stage is to produce a final report, but then also to discuss that with the city to look at what lessons can be what are the quick wins, where are there areas where maybe some advice in terms of improving the inventory itself, or in understanding what the uncertainties are. So we see that final stage as an interactive stage, and there may be some kind of loop or some iteration going back and improving some of the inputs following that initial phase. Okay, I'll now hand across to David, who's going to talk a bit more detail about the verification tools.
Thank you. So it's a verification service that we're looking at in developing and supplying is it's a two-part service. One of the data collection and then an aiding with cities in doing the data collection side, and the other side is actually the verification. So on the compilation side, at the moment we're devising spreadsheets for the data collection. There's 3 levels under the GPC of how you declare your data and what sectors get included in the base, or in the basic plus and the expanded. So these template spreadsheets will be designed so you choose what you're reporting to, so that you only allows you to put in the data that you need. As Rod was alluding to, we need the activity data and their uncertainties, if possible, actual numbers, or high, medium, or low. The same with the emission factor data, the emission factors and their uncertainties. So we can cope with activity data with one data quality and an emission factor with a different data quality, and take that into account. And so the spreadsheets will tell you whether you've supplied all the information you need to supply. It also then it will do your calculations for you for your emissions totals, and it will just have a basic check on those data that they make sense and look for obvious outliers. We'll also be writing user guides for these spreadsheet templates, and just some general advice on data collection and self-verification. When we've collected the data, we'll use the validation tools. Move to the next one. To actually analyse the data in more detail. As I said, if you use the template, if the templates have been used, it will already help to show whether you're compliant with the GPC process. If you haven't used the templates, then obviously we'll be doing more checking of the data to make sure that the protocol's been followed for the data collection side, and against all of the subsectors and sectors required for the 3 different levels of reporting. We'll be looking at the impact of the data quality on the totals in a similar manner to Thomas presented, just as an overview check on impacts. We'll talk about the more detailed assessment in the next slide. We also are going to do this comparison with emission totals from national figures, and as we build up databases of different cities, we should be able to do comparisons of cities with similar demographics to see if certain sectors are outliers or not. You might have a totally valid reason for one sector being totally different to every other city. Your layout, you might be an island or something, could be different factors. So this comparison with national figures, cluster analysis with a larger database will help to show, excuse me, be able to show where you sit with other people. And then, as Rod was alluding to with the Monte Carlo sensitivity analysis, it will be able to actually analyse which areas of the uncertainty budget are having the most impact. You can see where, if you change something, how the uncertainty in that change will propagate through the uncertainty of the final number. And you can use it to do the what-if analysis that Rod was talking about, to see where the best cost-benefit will come, whether it's improving activity data, whether it's improving emission factors, or whether it's actually going out there and getting the public to change their behaviour to reduce their emissions, which is a difficult bit. And from all of this, it will produce a risk ranking of all of the emission sectors and subsectors to show how these influences, or these individual things, are influencing the overall data quality. If we go back to see if there's any more questions on that part before we go to the summary of the questionnaire responses.
Yes, now the floor is open again Scott, if you have any question regarding to the detail of this verification service David just introduced? No. So we can go on the conclusion of questionnaire.
Right, so it clearly sent out questionnaires to 100, I think, no, sorry, 44. This is also 100 cities, I can't remember. To 44 different cities. 26, we had 26 replies for North America, South America, Europe, and Asia. There's no reasoning apart from that's the order that we received them in. Okay. And moved on. I've summarised the data into pie charts, just to look in a bit more detail. Most of the people who replied used their inventory for basically a goal setting or tracking of performance. 3 or 4 are required to produce their inventories for higher governance, and 1 person uses it for other usage. A variation of experience of different cities putting together their inventories. Most people think that they are experienced. The level of experience in that box goes from 2 years up to something like 21 years. It's quite broad coverage. So 73% of cities think they're experienced. 19% are just getting started or have done it once, and then 2 of the cities are new starters and haven't actually put an inventory together yet. Average is 5.5. Next one. There's a variety of different protocols used by the 26 cities. 36% are using a non-published standard, or they're using published standards but not international standards. 36%. And then there's about equal across the IPCC national reporting methods, and then with the IEAP, which is the ICLAI version, I think, and the different versions of GPC. Out of all of the cities, 42% publish the report to the Carbon Climate Registry, 31 just publish their report, and then 27 of them are unpublished. So not all of the cities gave details on how they use their, or how they compile their activity data. So only 45% of the cities gave more details. So over half of those responses use local activity data, so that is the high data quality in the GPC. 30% of the regional level of the medium data quality, and 20% at the low data quality GPC national level. And it's pretty equal across all of the people who replied where they think their most uncertain activity data is. So pretty well all the same from different cities across. Let's move to the next one. Not many people replied back saying that they'd had actual verification of their inventories. So 7 out of the 10 responses had just done a completeness check, where only 3 had actually looked at how the accuracy and uncertainty of their data affected their emission totals. And out of also those 10, 80% of them, out of 10 of them, did internal verification, and only 2 had used an external verification. And from also the people who replied on this one, only 38% of the 26 cities say where they would think that their inventory could be most improved if they reduced the uncertainties or improved the data quality. Most people are looking to delve deeper into stationary energy or transportation. That's the end of mine.
Okay. So I think just in summary on the responses we received, there was a wide range of different experience and different levels, but there were some common views in terms of where improvements, that there was a general feeling that the transport and the built environment, so the buildings, so primarily the stationary energy feeding into the building emissions were the highest. As I said at the beginning, one of the aims of the project is to develop services which have a life beyond the project, and so the idea is that one of the final outcomes of the project is the development of tools and services which would support verification. And I think partly that will be, these tools will not only be available as external verification tools, but also they'll be available to cities to do to help internally in terms of doing the verification. So some of the things that we're developing, which you will have heard mentioned, are spreadsheets and tools and codes which will do the Monte Carlo analyses, or will do the data assessment to support the checking against the requirements, and also to do the uncertainty, or to help with the uncertainty calculations. However, one of the things that we are looking at is how much of these tools can be generic and can be applied across all cities, and how much there is a need for bespoke tools, or tools which are developed in or modified for a particular city's case. Because one of the things we have seen already in the discussions is that when we look globally, there is obviously a vast range of specific issues that may be relating to only a few cities, and then it's a case of how to adapt the tools to a given city's own inventory and the issues that affect that city. And as we say again, the outputs in terms of the compliance, data quality assessments, and I think, as David said, the ability to do comparisons against other cities. So some of the added value will be as we build up knowledge of the verification, or as verification is undertaken. There will be this ability, potentially under the ICLE kind of umbrella, to have to make use of the data from different cities to show whether there are particular outliers or whether there are particular issues, and to look at comparability, and using those data, so using the whole population of city inventories to help in the initial assessment of cities. One of the things that we're looking at is that the final stage. What would an overall verification service with all of these additional numerical approaches? What would the kind of cost of that as a service be? And within for next year, we're developing a number of these tools, and as a part of that development process, we'll be running the verification service, and there would be then potentially cities involved who would put forward a contribution either from the city or through other funding sources, and then the final service would then be potentially rolled out as a commercial service, or and the full service would be, as we say, of the order of something like 70k euros, which is about 80 to 90 dollars, I think, K dollars. So that's the kind of thing in terms of this full numerical assessment. And so that's the summary of the work we're at. And one of the things which we haven't mentioned, but I think relates to the work we're doing with ICLE, is also, as a part of this, is the development of a verification protocol, or something, so that there is some attempt to harmonize verification activities at a global sense. We're not expecting there will be one supplier of verification. So we're trying to build a set of tools that would be usable by cities themselves or by verification.
Great, thank you very much. And if there's still any, I'm sorry? there any question from your side? Okay, so I think so. Thank you very much for your attending to this webinar, and I hope you are still interested. We will keep in touch in the following emails. I will wrap up this webinar and send you the link for the record. And if you or any of your colleagues is interested, you can contact us when you need it. Okay? So thank you everyone for joining. Oh, sorry. Thank you everyone for joining this webinar. Have a nice evening or afternoon.
Or morning.
Or morning. I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought it was this afternoon already. Okay, bye.